do you think that just a software by itself, let's just call it an AI, can be innovative in the future? Hello, hola, namaste, salam, merhaba, annyeonghaseyo, in all the world languages. Welcome to a new episode of Technology Innovation. Today we have the pleasure to welcome an awesome guest, Marck.
Hi.
Hi. So Marck is the head of XR Labs Berlin. He is also specialized in innovation management, and he is here today to talk to us about innovation management.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So, Marck, my first question would be like, what is innovation management? How would you define it?
Yeah, so online you'll find some pretty vague definitions about like the process of managing innovation processes. So it's pretty unclear, I think. The best way I would put it is the continued development, if you could say, of not only your product or your company, but also your value chain, and that uses a certain set of principles in order to achieve those achievements or those changes.
Yeah, but like I would just ask, what is the difference between product management in this case?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Generally, product management uses some innovation techniques.
Okay.
At least if you're, I guess, a competent product manager. Which there's no reason why you wouldn't be, I guess. But the special thing about innovation management is that it incorporates not only one product or one person, but a culture, a mindset, and let's call it a structural shift within your company. That makes sense?
Still, yeah. I would ask, because like it's a lot of big terms, how would you do that actually? How would you are talking about restructuring the company, it's a culture, what are the tools that you would use to do that?
Well, generally I think that you would have to start with. Now, when I say structural shift, I don't mean that you're going to restructure the company. I don't mean you fire people and other people move in. But there has to be a...
It's not that easy in Europe.
Yeah.
Because he's from California, so...
Right. And I'm an American, and it doesn't really help that way. And I have most of my experience comes from China, which is way different from either of these places. Yeah. Now, the structural shift is more of a paradigm shift, right? So it's not that you get a new boss. It's that if your boss has the appropriate training, becomes an equal in sorts, right? They're in the same, let's say it lowers like hierarchy, is the best way to put it, right? And it doesn't have to do it on paper, but it does it in the meeting room. It does it during design thinking sessions. It does it during, I don't know what else, lunch.
Okay.
Like that.
Yeah. How would you actually measure innovation? Do you have any KPIs in mind?
Right. So, personally, I'm a big fan of iterative management, lean management methods. And there's a whole book you could read about that. But generally, there are a few different KPIs, and I have a couple written down here to help out. Now, these KPIs can be applied before, if you look at the value chain, so they can be applied during the input process and the output process, right? And a couple of them, for example, we have capabilities. So that's not just capabilities of your product or your technology, but of your company within the market, right? And then you have the structures of your company. So this is how, let's say, how well your company is suited to adapt, right? Or shift focus, pivot. Yeah. And then you have the culture of the company. And this one is a lot more tricky to really nail down. And it could take years before you get any proper cultural KPIs, right? Because there's like, everybody has a different definition of culture, and there's usually no rule book for that kind of thing. Then you would have, of course, the strategy of your company, and this is has a lot to do with positioning of your product, of your brand, etc. And then in the end, you finally have your brand and your product, right? And that is kind of the output, or the what would you call this? The best visual example, the best public example of the epitome of all of those KPIs together.
Okay.
I hope I'm trying. I hope that makes some sense.
It's very good, because you gave like 5 big pillars. It's not that concrete, but let's say if we pick capabilities, what is a concrete KPI, and just an example, so that actually people understand better how to apply these KPIs in their environments?
Yeah. So depending on the goals of your company or of your product, the capabilities is the ability to move towards the goal, right? Mm-hmm. So let's if you take mobility, for example, Mercedes-Benz comes to mind. Being in Germany, perhaps one of their capabilities for their mobility services is literally just the ability to move people. You know, how many people do they move every year? How many people use their services? How far do they go? These sort of things. So if you're talking about concrete KPIs, how many people do you move, or how far?
Okay. Do you use actually any specific tools or software to help you do the management, like innovation management?
There are tools and software, but we don't use any.
Okay.
Yeah, we feel that most of the research needs to be done basically boutique.
Okay.
Yeah, and any kind of any kind of convenience we would find from the software would probably not work for us in the long term.
Why is that?
Because things are consistently changing in most industries. I mean, everything's so fast-paced; it's really hard to keep up. If you're a company and you're using innovation management actively within your practice, this is a lot easier to do for some people because they have people working on it. They have software that collects the data, that centralizes it, some server somewhere. But for us here, we don't use any.
Okay.
Yeah. We do all the search, we do all the research and all of the project material, all of the stuff. We create it all in-house when it's ordered, more or less.
But do you think that actually technology can support? So I know that you don't use tools, but do you see a need to use tools, or like software tools precisely?
Yeah, I think technology can really support us in different ways. One particular type of technology that we use often here in the lab is just telecommunications. It's just Skype calls, live design sessions. I don't know if you can see it, but behind us we have a big Microsoft Surface, which we use for a lot of design thinking sessions and big conference calls. So
cool.
That is the number one piece of software that helps us the most, and just the ability to connect.
Yeah. I would just ask you one actually last question. Do you think that just a software by itself, let's just call it an AI, can be innovative in the future? Or can do innovation in the future?
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, yeah. Yeah. Could it be innovative? I'm torn between an answer. Yeah. You know, like the creative in me wants to say that, like, also the human wants to say that, like, that the creative spark is really what makes innovation interesting and a human kind of characteristic. But I think that with the rate at which AI or deep learning is taking place, you will find the traditional markets that are easier to measure in terms of output will be probably can be iterated upon just by using AI. And one of the best examples, I think, of I wouldn't say innovation management, but a form of innovation that was human-assisted, AI-powered, is the concert house in Hamburg.
Oh, yeah, I know that one.
Yeah, and that's one of the best design ideas I could think of where AI came in and made some decisions for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's definitely like a great example of how you can innovate or create using software. But I had in mind basically just because you mentioned innovation management, you have like these processes, you have iteration, you measure things, and then based on these KPIs, you make decisions. And you can basically have a software doing all these things like measuring and just taking decisions so that you maintain this iterative innovation.
Yeah. That's where that's why I hesitate to say that they could be innovative or they could conduct innovation management. It's easy for any kind of tech to measure things and report that measurement. Like that's very simple. It's slightly more difficult, but it's still quite easy for AI to take those measurements and then produce some kind of meaningful data.
Okay.
Right? Like that's not in the future at all. Like we do that all the time now. And big automotive companies, Tesla comes to mind. Tesla does that quite easily. But where you get into a sticky situation is when you ask the AI to then improve upon or use that data in to improve your product, right? So if you take Tesla, for example, and they collect, well, I don't remember, like I think it's every day it's like 2 trips to the moon or something. Like that's how many miles of data they collect. It's ridiculously amount. It's just huge, because all their cars are set up with sensors and cameras, and they're connected to the cloud, and they're always talking, and they're always processing a ton of data, right? You literally can't employ enough people to sift through that data and find meaningful information. So you have to employ an AI, and they do that. But now, if the AI tells them that, let's say that when roads get icy, that the car pulls a little to the left. Now, there are a couple of different things you can take, and AI could suggest these. You could say, oh, well, we could, you could lower the suspension on the left side, or on the right side, or whatever. Or you could just slightly steer to the right, just corrective steering. These are all processes that can be processes that can be suggested by the AI, but which one is the right decision, right? Which one is going to improve the distance of the car? I would say the miles per gallon, but it's probably an old term these days. Miles per charge. Which improves comfortability for the person in the car, and that all takes more testing. Yeah. So I don't think that AI will be at a place within the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years where it can successfully innovate products. I still think it takes the human decision to do that. That makes sense?
Yeah, definitely. We still need you.
I hope so. I try to make myself useful sometimes.
Yeah, you could do a lot of cool stuff. If AI is taking over, you can play with your HTC Vive.
Yeah, I'd rather just sit at home and let the AI do all the work.
Yeah,
for sure.
Cool. So thanks a lot. Thank you very much, guys. And don't forget, you can always comment. You can reach. I will just write the contacts of Marck here. You can always reach out to him directly. And don't forget to subscribe. Thank you very much. Yeah, bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao.